Welcome to the annual meeting. Got very lucky to have Nigel Wade come and talk to us about photography tonight. He's a bit of a backdoor sort of invitation to him. We sort of thinking about it. I said, we'll take us to the other photography magazine. He said, oh, do you see he said, oh, I've got just the man to come and talk to you. And after a few weeks of negotiations, here he is to come and talk to us.
Guys, thank you for having me. And Andy, thanks for such a nice introduction. I'll take the permission. Speakers for you from BC. We found me. Right.
Yeah.
The back door, guys, is Speakers for You off the British Society of Underwater Photographers website, which is really nice. What we do is we just, if members of BC give talks, they put you on there. I just happen to be West Berkshire. Otherwise, you'd have had somebody really good like Alex Mustard coming down, or I don't know. Yeah. I mean, Alex gives the talks, but he wouldn't do it for free like me. He's a bit mercenary. I'm lucky. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Nigel Wade. The little LRPS bit is I'm an associate. I've only just got this actually of the Royal Photographic Society. Yes. That took some getting. I'm an underwater photographer. I'm also a diver. Now, which comes first? When I first started to take photos underwater, and I explained this throughout the presentation, when I first started to take photos underwater, I was a diver that took a camera. You know, and I took a small compact. Am I in frame, Steve? I took a small compact.
If you could stand up, Nigel, that'd be
That's my bottom lip going. My wife doesn't dive. She's got serious asthma, and we were diving out in the Maldives, and I'm coming back and I'm saying, "Oh, Karen, you're not going to believe what I've just seen," and explaining about all these different species of fish I've just seen. And she's like, "Oh." So the following year we went to the Maldives. I took one of those little plastic disposable underwater cameras you take down to 3 metres, and in the lagoon at Lily Beach where we were diving, where we were staying, there was a juvenile black-tip reef shark, and I managed to get some shots on this camera. Wow, blown away, and that was it. I was hooked. And it's gone crazy since. But the reason that I started taking photographs in the first place was to share them with the governor. And as it happens, she now is mad on snorkeling, and I taught her to dive. She's got a PADI open water certificate, but she doesn't dive because of her asthma, and I can't have her diving. She can breathe in, she can't breathe out. If she had to make an ascent, she's going to have real problems. So she snorkels with me. So there we are in Funafushi in the Maldives. It's not the only place we go, by the way. We're in Funafushi in the Maldives, and we're diving off the house reef, which actually drops down to 30 metres as a wall, about 15-20 metres off the beach. And we're just snorkeling away there, and this huge silver-tip shark came up between us. I saw it coming along the reef, and it came up between us, and it literally separated us. And it looked at Karen, it looked at me, and then just went down again. I thought, oh my God, she's going to try walking on water to get back to the beach. Isn't that most people's reaction if they don't dive and they're not used to seeing sharks in the water? Do you know what she did? She lifted her head above the water, took her mask up, took her snorkel out, and said, "What species of shark was that then?" So I said to her, "It's a silvertip, babe." She said, "Do you think it'll come back?" Well, what did you say then? I said, "Well, yeah, it may do." She said, "I hope so." I thought, that's my girl. So let me tell you a bit. I've told you all about my wife, haven't I? Let me tell you a little bit about me. I've been diving since 1991, so that's actually 20 years this year. And it doesn't seem that long, to be truthful. That 20 years has really motored. I'm not in teaching status now, but I am a qualified PADI Master Scuba Diver Trainer. I used to work at Raisby Dive Centre, running the dive school there. Can I remember, and if anyone else remembers Steve, because Steve still goes to Raisby. This is important as an underwater photographer. I am a solo diver. But I'm really proud of this next bit. I am the UK's very first PADI self-reliant diver. PADI have gone solo. If you want to read about it, next week, Diver magazine comes out. I've got a 4-page spread in there, all about solo diving and the the PADI self-reliant diver course. Yeah, PADI now state that you can dive independent of other divers. Listen, this is like repealing prohibition. Honest to God, this is like repealing prohibition. I'm a TDI advanced trimix diver, qualified to dive to 100 metres on normoxic trimix. That was taken on Autumn Dream in 2005. I just finished an 80-metre dive, I think, Steve, on the Bog Tots tour. Dived and survived. I dive personally in the UK. I dive on an Inspiration and Visionary breather. I don't take my camera when I've got the vision. I'll explain why in a second. In 2008, I was voted the UK's underwater photographer of the year. Wow, you know, that makes me an award-winning photographer. Have a look at my website. Nigel Wade, award-winning underwater photographer. How good? LRPS. GCE, CSE, PADI, BSAC, I don't know. But that was a hell of an accolade, to be truthful. I work, and I have done for the last 7 years, on the Diver magazine test team. I work with the technical editor. I've been fortunate enough to go on, I think, 3 trips, 2 to Taba, 1 to Sharm el-Sheikh. The 2 to Taba were to test regulators. One set of tests was testing deep regulators down to 50 metres. And the last one we did, which was last year, 2010, yeah, last year, was we were testing budget regulators. But that included an atomic T1, which is £1,000, so where that came from I don't know. That photograph there was in Diver magazine. It's at Rosebery, and we were testing. I was guinea pig on a James Bond Sea Bob sea scooter. That thing does, you ready? 21 knots. Yeah, well, you just wind it up and it just rips your mask and your everything off. I mean, you've got to hold on to it by these handles, yeah, and you just let it go and it dies. What a tool, but not for scuba diving. In fact, not even for snorkeling. You know, it's a jet ski that goes underwater. I write for Diver magazine. This year I've had so far 3 articles published. One's in this month's, the current edition. I've got the solo diving thing coming out next month as well. That was a cover shot of mine. I did an article on master alarm diving. And, as I said earlier, I'm a licentiate of the Royal Photographic Society. So what we're going to talk, I've talked about me now. Guys, Ready and Dive Club. Ooh, this is pretty cool. Yeah, and Morag's a member. Is she here? Morag here? No.
She's trying to move away.
Is that Morag from Yorkshire Diver fame?
Yeah.
17 billion
Scooby.
posts. Yeah? Scooby snaps. Yeah, whatever. She vilified me, and I am persona non grata on Yorkshire Divers. Not a story for tonight, but I'd love to have met her. I really would.
It sounds like a story for tonight.
Come on.
Give her a ring. This is what we're going to be talking about. First thing, let's get serious, guys. It's about underwater photography, not about me and Morag, is it? Is all that in focus, by the way? Does that look sharp? Can you? That's better. I'm going to be glasses on the aspect savers. I want to talk to you a little bit about safety, but more importantly, conservation. Then I'm going to talk about, briefly, in the beginning, I've already touched on the subject, how it kicked off for me, what sort of images I was getting, what sort of images I'm getting now. You're not really interested in what kit I use. This is a standard presentation that I get, but I'll just run through it real quickly. We'll also talk about the settings that I use. If there are any techno geeks amongst us, I'll talk about it in detail. If not, I'll just whiz through that. That's probably not for tonight. We want to talk about water, light and colour. I want to talk about backscatter. You know, the underwater photographer's worst nightmare. I want to talk about different techniques, and what I'm going to talk about is macro and wide angle, under overshots, or split levels as some people call them, and then it's time for a quick beer. The biggest part of the evening is going to be about composition. Diver portraits, if you use a digital camera, that means you've got to use a computer. If you're using a computer and you're taking your images as raw images, then you've got to use some sort of processing software, Photoshop, whether it be Elements or Photoshop Creative Suite or Lightroom as Steve uses, or you will need some way, yeah? All of those you can manipulate the photographs in, so I'll talk a little bit about manipulating images. I want to talk to you about getting images for publication, because that's what I do, and then we just run through some of the stuff I've had published over the last sort of 15 months or so, 14 months. And then I've got a little slideshow, I think 28 or 30 images that are my favourites. Yeah? Before we start, guys, I do this for a living, and this is a freebie tonight, but what I want to do is try and sell you some of my limited edition prints. I normally sell these at £35. They're individually numbered and signed, but tonight, if you want them, if you want one, I'm going to sell them for £20 each. They're actually really good quality prints. Have a look, tell me what you think. Yep? Okay. Any questions so far? The way I like to do the presentation is not just stand up here and yadder on. If you've got a question to ask, don't leave it, grab me there and then. Yeah, just stick around that way or say, Nigel, whatever you want, rather than leave it to the end. And I promise you I won't belittle you with my answer. Steve will remember the story. Anybody ever heard of a guy called Keith Morris? Keith was probably the top technical diving instructor, definitely in the UK, but on the planet. Yeah, and he was a very close friend of mine and Steve's. He lost his life diving a megalodon rebreather out in the Channel in 2005. Wow. Well, when Keith was teaching, was running a trimix course with us, I'm a PADI diver. Has anybody ever heard of the term bag off? No, you don't know what bag off is? Oh, thank God for that. Can I swear?
Yeah.
I just need to tell you this as it is. You all right with this? Keith's there. There's a classroom full of students, and Keith's there, and he said, and when you get to that stage of the dive, you bag off. And I've looked around, I thought, what the hell's he on about? And I've looked around, and everybody's going, what's he on about? So I asked the question. So I said, Keith, what do you mean by bag off? His exact reply, are you fucking kidding? And I felt that big, and everyone else in the class went, oh, thank God. I didn't ask. He says, deploy your DSMB, and turned his back and walked out. I promise you, if you ask a question, I will not say, are you fucking kidding? Because I know how that feels. Right? So, but if you may lose the moment. So if there's something you want to ask it there and then. Just stop me dead, yeah? Even if I'm in full flow. Right, in the beginning, let's talk about safety and conservation. All the images you'll see tonight, except for two, are mine, which is pretty cool, isn't it? That's the RNLI lifeboat at Weymouth. You probably pass it every single time you go out on Autumn Dream or Skin Deeper or whatever boat you use down there. Tango, don't know. Tango? Yeah. Phil Corbin, what a lovely guy. Do you know his son's a fireman? I was a fireman for 31 years. I retired last year. Wow. But his son was a fireman. Guess where he ended up? I was in Surrey Fire and Rescue Service. He was in Guildford. Phil Corbin's boy was a fireman in Guildford. My brigade. Always be aware of the inherent dangers of working in, on, or under water. Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're using scuba gear. We all know how to dive, but as soon as you put a camera in your hand, you stop looking at your gauge. Definitely. Well, you do, don't you? And then all of a sudden, you stop looking at your computer, you stop looking at your gauge, you've got 15 minutes of deco to do, because you've really gone well past your no stop limit, and guess what? You've got 15 bars left. Been there, done that, lots of times. And I'm a solo diver, and I've got nobody to breathe, no octopus to breathe off of. Yeah, helicopter please. Be aware of that. The reason I don't dive with my inspiration vision and my camera is because the inspiration vision is a complex piece of kit, and I need to pay attention to what it's telling me. I've got a heads-up display, I've got an audible warning, but I've got a really complex computer and a VR3 that I use as well. I need to concentrate on working the machine and staying alive.
What's a VR3?
So VR3 is a technical mixed gas dive computer. Sorry, it's okay. But it's quite a technical, you know, they require your attention to work them. All of a sudden, you don't want to be looking through your viewfinder when you're getting a cell error, or you're getting normoxic oxygen or gas you're breathing. So I don't dive with them both. And here's my little mantra. It's better to be on the boat wishing you're in the water than in the water wishing you're on the boat. And that is so true, isn't it? It takes a lot of bottle to say, you know, this dive isn't for me. Especially when you've all kitted up ready to go. It doesn't have to take a lot of bottle to say, nah. But you can always do it tomorrow. And if you don't feel right, then don't do it. Don't do it. So that's the bit on the safety. Let's talk about conservation. 2009, I was in Eilat in Israel for the Red Sea shootout. It's an underwater photography competition with huge prizes. The best 5 image portfolio wins £10,000 in cash, plus a 2-week liveaboard to Fiji. Oh no, sorry, that one was to Roger Ampet for 2 weeks. That's just for the best 5 image portfolio. The best individual shot wins £5,000 and a 2-week liveaboard in Egypt, in the Red Sea. And I was also entered in the media category. There were only 10 of us as underwater photographers of the year. Only 10 of us competing for a top prize of £5,000 and 2 weeks on the liveaboard in Fiji. No, I didn't win it. Gutted. But because the competition is so high, I found one evening this guy in Moses Rock Marine Park. Now, Moses Rock Marine Park is policed by marine policemen. They come down with you with their little compact cameras and take photographs of you taking photographs or diving around it. If they see you even touch the coral, you're nicked. You know, we are the Sweeney and we haven't had our lunch, kind of nicked. But they're not there at night, and the whole thing's shut. You have to go through an entrance, or you can swim 1/4 mile down it. So we swam down there, and this guy was standing on this bit of table coral, and in the wall in front of him, just underneath the jetty, was this little yellow frogfish he was taking photographs from. So I grabbed him and I said, no. And he went and pushed me away. So I took a photograph of him, actually of his feet. If I'd gone up and took a photograph of his face and he was aware of it, I'd have probably got my hoses slashed or something. So I took that photograph, plus that one, yeah, and then went back the following day and took that one, where he smashed it. So, these 2 photographs I submitted to the Marine Police, and they waited at the dive centre, at Mount Dive Centre the following day. His kit is quite distinctive, isn't it, with the yellow blues and the fins, and you know. And they waited while everyone was getting kitted up, saw him, and they arrested him. Now we're in Israel, so they arrested him at gunpoint. And fined him on the spot, you ready? €500. At gunpoint, you pay it. The guy was Israeli, and he was there to get the shots for the... So we don't do that, do we?
No.
This is how we dive when we're taking photographs. We maintain good buoyancy, we look, we don't touch, and we don't harass the marine life. I've got that in the wrong order. I don't do this very often, you do the show. That's how you should be taking images. And notice she's looking up. This is Geraldine Boisier. She's the wife of the French underwater photographer. She's lovely. Lovely, I think is the term. There's another little mantra. Take only photographs, leave only bubbles. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. And if you can get it as pristine as this and then leave it as pristine as that, you've had a result. Because if you don't, you're going to get a visit from the Marine Police. And they will impound your camera gear. And believe you me, you're going to have a hell of a job getting that back.
Is that made up shot?
No, it's not. That's Jim Abernethy from Shearwater down in the Bahamas. Jim Abernethy runs JASA, Jim Abernethy Scuba Tours. Scuba Adventures, JASA. He's famous for his shark dives. And he is an underwater photographer. That's his CNC setup. And Emma, huge tiger shark. Eric Chen took that. It's the last photograph and that photograph, the only 2 I can't give credit.
Did he get it back?
Yes. Right, here we go. This is some of my work. What do you think? Yeah? Come on, guys. That is a Titan triggerfish.
Quality.
Isn't it? Do you know, I was really excited by this because I got back and I showed my wife this photograph of the Titan triggerfish. But what's wrong with that photograph? Roger asked me if I would critique your photos, if you brought photographs along, if I'd critique them. And the answer to that is no. And what I'm going to do is ask you to critique your own photographs. And the reason is that I don't have to be brutal then and piss you off, yeah? More importantly, and destroy you. More importantly, when you take a photograph underwater, you need to look in your back screen and you will see for yourself. You're the only person that can critique the photograph. And if you go, well, that's not right, maybe I need to get underneath that a little bit more, or to the side, or that sun's too bright in the frame, or I haven't got the colours right, I need to pull in on it, wind the strobe power up, or whatever you need to do, you need to do it there and then. Yeah? Don't come to me and say, would you critique this photograph, because I'm going to rip it to shreds, unless it's really good. I'm the worst critic on this planet, and you have to be if you want to improve. Yeah? So what I want you guys to do is go back and have a look at your own, after the whole presentation, go and have a look at your own work and be your own critiques, because you're the one who's going to look in the viewfinder, sorry, the LCD screen, after you've taken the shot. You need to be able to critique your own shot then. Yeah? So what do you think of that? No? What's wrong with it?
It's a bit lost in the
Well,
the fish is
you're
lost.
taking a picture of the rock. It's blown out of the front.
Listen, I've got a horrible backscatter there, haven't I? Yeah?
I quite like
I
the
used
picture.
strobe because I wouldn't have backscatter if I didn't have a strobe, would I? I'm too far away and I've got no colour. The only bit that the strobe light is actually hitting is that white rock, isn't it?
What is that above?
That's the surface.
Yeah.
I like that bit.
Yeah, but I
That's the
like
best
that.
bit, isn't it?
but I like that because you've got distance in there. You know.
I've got a good depth of field is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Right, how about
Yeah.
this? It's a lionfish, come on guys!
You still have
Too
to.
close.
You haven't got the whole of it, though.
Yeah, I've clipped it a
You
bit,
don't
haven't
always
I?
need the whole of it.
You've clipped it.
You know, my wife looked at that and she said, you know, Nigel, you need to get a bit closer.
But I like
So that was close up.
But you still have the depth of field because of the background.
No, because the background is actually very, very blurred, isn't it?
Yeah, so you still have the depth of field.
But what's wrong with that? I didn't
But
use
are
the
you going to
strobe.
get one or the other?
Colours
You're either
and
going to get
Yeah.
the focus on your subject, or you're going to get
You're wrong.
blur, depending on the camera.
Ah, the lens.
But if you've
How
got
about that?
normal
Is that better?
digital with a house,
Yeah, that's a better shot, isn't it?
yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. So from that to that, what's the difference?
The lighting.
The lighting, the composition,
Colours.
the exposure, the colour. Well, the colours are down to lighting. How about that for a lionfish shot?
Lovely.
Difference is, what I've done with that one is I've just found really good negative space, i.e. that really nice dappled light. Late evening light, it's green because the sun goes yellow, this is taking the Red Sea in the lap. As the sun drops it goes yellow, through the blue water you get that lovely green sheen, and it's much easier to control with a digital camera. I'll explain that later. Find really good negative space, and I'm going to say this over and over and over again. If you want to improve your photography, find really good negative space and then find something to stick in it. And if it's a common subject like a lionfish, and you can light it okay so it shows the colours, then wahoo, what a result. I actually like the photograph. What do you think, guys? I don't need you to pump me up, by the way. If you hate it, tell me. Yeah? And I'll just carry on.
So first ask what makes good negative space?
I've got a whole slide on that bit later. What we're going to see, when we dive in, what we're actually going to be taking photographs of. We're going to be taking photographs of fish, critters, it might be shoals of fish, or individual fish. Yeah? Critters. Critters can be anything, from tiny little shrimps to crabs to, I don't know if you want to call nudibranchs critters, to flatworms to slugs, to, you name it, but also cuttlefish and reef squid. We're going to see big pelagic fish. Hope. Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're going to have, obviously, if you're diving abroad, we're going to get reef scenes. We're going to see wrecks and wreckage. Anyone recognise that?
Never seen it.
We're going to see wrecks and wreckage. If you're not with me, you'll see divers. But you will, wouldn't you? You've always got a buddy to take a photograph of, and diver portraits can be fantastic. And actually, I sell a lot of diver portraits, which is nice to the divers. Obviously, they want a picture of themselves, don't they? We'll also see the Holy Grail, interaction. Maybe not with human-animal interaction. Can I just point out something here that I didn't notice until I got this photograph home and stuck it on the laptop to process it? This is my dive guide, Samut, from, we didn't go to the Maldives. This was actually at Scuba Soraya in Bali. Yeah? What a guy Samut is. I've done a couple of trips there now and we're just best of mates. But When he's diving, he takes his top set of dentures out.
How did you get that?
And we're at a cleaning station. You can see the shrimps here, out of focus. We're at a cleaning station, and
The shrimp came to clean
yes,
it
and
out.
took his leg, opened his mouth, and the shrimp crawled into quite a nice shot, isn't it? Very different. Until you realise his top set's gone. Yeah, right. Very quickly, this is what I use to get the shots that you're going to see tonight. I use a big Nikon. My manager's a Canon man. I use a Nikon D300 SLR. What you've got to realise is whatever camera you take underwater, it needs to be disposable along with the lens that you put on it for that dive. It's not a case of if you're going to flood your camera, it's a case of when you're going to flood it. And when you do, believe you me, it will ruin your day. I need some wood to touch, so I haven't flooded it yet. There's a huge range of lenses with every Nikon camera, Canon camera, Sony, Tokina, Sigma, you name it. There's lenses coming out of everywhere, yeah, millions of them. But for underwater use, there are only really 2 lenses that you need. One of them is a 60mm macro. I also use a 105mm macro, I'll explain why later. You can use a medium range zoom, which is good for doing diver portraits, but that lens gets used very, very little nowadays because I use a fisheye lens. I'll explain about fisheye lenses later. The Nikon 10.5 is an unbelievably sharp lens, 180 degree field of view, but this is the bow. This is the one. I don't think I've used my 10.5 for years. The Tokina 1017 zoom. It's a fisheye, it's a zoom lens. When that came out, that's what absolutely changed underwater photography.
But it's not cheap, right?
300 quid. Oh, that's not cheap.
Pocket money is cheap.
£1,200, 300 quid, 400 quid.
Nikons aren't cheap.
Of course they're not. This is what's not cheap.
£5 grand.
Yeah.
£5 grand. £5 for the housing. £1,300 for that wide angle dome port. £800 for the macro port. I don't know, 200 quid for the extension rings, and about 100 quid for the zoom gears. Then on top of that, you need to light the subject. £700 for an in-on Z240. I use 2 of them. And then each one of those components that you see, there's around about £45 each. Clamp 45 quid, arm actually about 60 quid, arm 45, yada yada yada. Yeah. So if you want to take photographs underwater, guys, start doing the lotto. That's my setup altogether, set up for macro. When I put a macro lens on, 60mm or the 105, I use a flat port. I won't go back, but I use a dome port for the fisheye work. And you need that for the over-unders. Yeah. So 2 strobes, mounted on the arms, synced in electronically.
Did you set that all up before you dive?
Yeah, can't do it under level.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, you're set up for macros, so that's all
Yes,
you can do.
you're dead right. And how many times have you had the 105 on, which is
And
the
you
super
want to do
macro
something
lens,
else?
and you're taking photographs of a whalefish's eye, because that's all you can get. In fact, there's an image on here, which was a Napoleon wrest. Yeah, actually it's quite a nice photograph of his eye, as it happens, but it just meant that I came across this huge Napoleon wrest that was really friendly and wanted me, to interact with it, and I had the 105 macro lens on. I'll show you later. Compact cameras. John Banting from Diver Magazine says to me all the time, if this underwater photography game was easy, everyone would be doing it. Well, actually, John, they are. Playing the violin is not easy, that's why none of us do it. Does anyone play a violin? I'll rest my case. Yeah? Underwater photography is really easy because the technology now that's coming out, and people like me that come along and talk to you about it, but the technology that's coming out makes it really easy. Yeah? I'm not scared of it because I'm able to sell my images, I'm quite well established now, I'm able to sell stories, workshops, presentations, whatever I need to do. And I don't feel threatened by up and coming underwater photographers because by the time you get to my standard, like next year, I'll have retired. Easy, isn't it? But compact cameras, now this is the way to go, but they have got their problems. We can house them for use. Virtually every single Canon, I can't believe I'm saying this, virtually every single Canon camera you can get a housing for. Canon do a housing for it. yeah, rated to 50 or 60 metres, and it's going to be a perspex housing, like that. Actually, that's an Icolite one, and Icolite do housings for virtually every popular compact, whether it be a Nikon, a Fuji, Olympus, Sony, or Canon. But the problem with underwater cameras, the compact cameras, is the flash is built in very, very close to the lens. Yeah? So if you take a photograph with it, you are likely to get backscatter. So it's much better to have an external strobe system. You won't have any, well, you can reduce the problems with backscatter. That's a very brave statement saying you won't have any backscatter. You can reduce the problems with backscatter substantially by having an off-camera strobe. But more importantly, you can be more creative. And if you're going to go and buy a strobe, then I suggest that you buy an Inon Z240 or 220 or whatever for £500 or £600, £700. Huge investment.
The strobe requires a hot shoe of some kind?
No. For these, you put a little link onto it there and a fibre optic cable, and it slaves it.
What's it linking to?
It's linking to the flash on your camera.
Can you do that with any?
Yeah.
Yes, you can link it to the flash on your camera with fibre optic. Yeah, and it's got a light sensitive, and it mimics the flash of the camera. So you're actually getting TTL through it, which I don't even mind.
Because my Fuji, I can't get housing for. Fuji don't do it.
Change your camera.
Otherwise you cannot use it.
I'm just going to ask you if that
Nigel's
housing.
got a second-hand Nikon for you.
They
That's-
did it
that's-
on their next model, but
That's
they
a cool
don't do it on
fix.
mine.
That's a Canon. I can't believe I've done that. I don't even know what camera's in that one. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, get the best strobe that you can possibly get, because cameras. Oh God. Today's technology is yesterday's technology tomorrow morning, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just whack, it's gone. And we're always looking to improve. And the problem is also that compact cameras, in fact, your camera itself is a disposable item. I've bought into the Nikon world because I've bought Nikon lenses. Doesn't matter what Nikon camera I get, whether it's a D300 or the D3S or the D4 that's muted coming out this year, and probably the D5 in 3 years' time. You know, you upgrade. But your strobe, if you buy wisely, you will have for the whole of your underwater photography life.
Will that go with any camera?
And yes, the Z240 will go on absolutely any camera. You can link it via fibre optic, and it's the only camera, it's the only strobe that you can link via electronics as well as fibre optics. So fantastic.
So is the strobe light neutral, or do you have to have a counterweight for stuff?
I think this stuff weighs probably, I think 7 kilos. My stuff weighs all told. In the water, it doesn't weigh anything because it's full of air. With the dome port on, it's negatively. It's neutrally buoyant. With the compact macro port on, because there's less air in that, it becomes slightly negative, and you just end up with big wrist muscles. I'll be honest. No, they're weightless underwater, but carrying it down to the boat docks a problem. Especially a fat old boy like me. Get one of those pay a young man to do it. But then you put in probably, I don't know, my whole setup when it's done together with the camera and the lens in and the housing, is about 10 grand's worth. Then you're giving a young man 10 grand's worth of camera gear. I'll struggle. I'll struggle on that. Yeah, I know.
But with this strobe then, what about, I mean, with a standard camera, if you were to use like one offset flash, you'd get a heavy shadow, so you'd use two to try
I'll
and
explain.
eliminate the shadow.
I'll explain. Are you interested in this?
Yeah.
This is Geeksville. Yeah? I shoot everything in manual so that I make my settings. Yeah? I use the light meter on my camera to look at the background, and I expose using my f-stop and my shutter speed to get the background exposed right. Then I use my strobes on manual. They've got different light settings on them, and I adjust the strobes to fill in the light that I want there. I paint with light, I call it, yeah, the subject. Now I shoot everything on manual. Autofocus, nowadays I'm using single survey, and the reason being is I can't press the shutter, it won't fire unless whatever's in the little square bit is actually in focus. And that way I don't come home without a focus shot. It's so disappointing, isn't it? you've done a photo shoot that you're hoping to sell, or you're doing it for a project, for a magazine or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's out of focus and you can't use it. What do you do? Go back? No, you can't. So you need to get it right there. So nowadays I'm using single servo, simply because on the Nikon camera you can lock the focus. It won't take the image unless it's in focus. And you get a little beep, it scares the fish, but at least I know it's in focus. I choose the focal point I want. I'm going to explain that in detail a bit later on, and I use the autofocus lock to lock on it. You'll see why a bit later on. I use spot metering. There are 3 ways of metering. The overall exposure will be metered, taking light readings from that amount. Well, that's no good for me, because underwater you get bright light at the top, dark underneath. Yeah, it's no good to me. I want to know exactly the bit that I'm setting the exposure for, and I like to set mid. This photograph's not a good example. I like to put it on the mid blue, and I use spot focus, and that is a tiny little spot. Whatever's inside the little square in your viewfinder, that's what sets the exposure. White balance. Why would you even want to set your white balance on anything but auto? Because you've got Photoshop to process the images afterwards, and you can adjust your white balance with that.
So you get it there and then.
You can, you're dead right, but with
I'll tell you what,
with the SLR,
if you're colourblind, it's all very well having it in Photoshop, but
I
you can't put
understand.
it.
He then comes in and gets, is this picture the right colour?
It's terrible.
I don't want to be faffing about with white balance because I'm using a DSLR. For compacts, you have to get the white balance right. Yeah, and all the white balance is getting your whites white. So what you do is you have a white slate with you put the camera on it and you set the white balance against the white slate. So it's just getting your whites white. For me, I have it on auto, dead easy. And I can, if I can't remember changing the white balance on any of the images you're going to see tonight. Any of those I've printed there. Not once have I changed the white balance on them. I haven't needed to. I take all my photographs in raw images. Why? It's the photo negative. Do you know why?
Because it's easiest to edit as well.
Okay, if I was to take a photograph of that sheet,
It's boring.
yeah, that part of the sheet, all in white,
Yeah.
yeah, actually it's not a good example, I need something a bit more colour in it. That part of your sleeve,
Okay.
it's all blue, isn't it? Take a photograph of that, I'm going to get probably 15,000 different shades of blue, different pixels. In RAW, it will record every single one, each pixel as it's seen it.
You're missing out.
As soon as I decide to take it in JPEG, the raw file needs to be compressed. And the way that it makes the file smaller is it throws information away. JPEG Fine takes a block of 9, 3, 3 and 3 pixels that are roughly the same colour and makes them all the same colour. JPEG Fine, JPEG Medium, I don't know what the next one is, yeah? And then JPEG Basic, isn't it? The next one down takes a block of 4x4, 16. Yeah? Pixels and does the same thing. The next one takes a block of 5x5 and makes them all the same colour. That's how you lose your information. RAW is your digital negative, and it keeps every single bit of information that came through the lens and hit the sensor. If you take it in JPEG, you'll have smaller files. You're not going to plug up your computer, and it'll be easier to process, but you lose so much information. So that's why I take it all in RAW. Don't want to be losing information. ISO, does anybody know about ISO? Yeah? I use, the problem with cameras, as soon as you start winding the ISO up, making the sensor more sensitive, you get electronic interference with it. And you get electric impulses spilling from one pixel to the next at high ISOs, and it blacks out, so you get what you call noise. Noise manifests itself mostly in the blue channel. That's interesting, isn't it? So if you use anything higher than ISO 400 with my D300 DSLR, then you will see noise in it. Steve's sitting there with a real smug grin on his face. Our friend has just bought a Nikon D3S, their flagship camera, paid £3.5, actually paid the top dollars for it, £3.5 £3,500 for this DSLR. You can wind that up to ISO 6,400 and with absolutely no noise in the image whatsoever. I could take a photograph from here, handheld, yeah, of you lot, and it would be like it was bright daylight in here on Steve's camera. I can't do that on mine. I could, but by winding the noise up to 6,400, it wouldn't be a usable image, just be full of noise. But underwater, noise manifests itself in the blue channel. So I use as lower ISO as I possibly can, yeah, and use a slower shutter speed to get the exposure I want. That's easier under. In the top there, you're going to get a shutter shake, yeah. Underwater, it's all nicely cushioned, isn't it? So you don't get such shutter shake. That's interesting. Because I'm using non-Nikon flash guns, i.e. the Inon Z240s, I can only sync to the maximum shutter speed for my camera. Most of them are 200th of a second to 250th of a second. The Nikon D300, thank God, can sync up to 320th of a second using FP auto, focal plane auto. Good, that's over. That's just boring. Let's talk about something we do know about. What do we know about water? In relation to underwater photography, water is just, without doubt, with photography, water is without doubt the very worst medium you could possibly use to take a photograph through. It absorbs light. It reflects light. It refracts light. It absorbs colour. We know that, don't we? It contains suspended particles. Oh great, backscatter. It's 800 times more dense than air. That's the only advantage I can think of. It cushions your camera so you don't get shutter shake. And it's wet. And let me tell you, you get it on your camera, you are going to have a really bad week. It destroys your cameras and lenses. As light passes through the water column, we know this from our basic open water courses, don't we? As light passes through the water column, it takes out colour from the visible spectrum. Red disappears at around about a metre, starts to fade, starts to go purple, followed by orange, yellow, green, blue doesn't. That's interesting, isn't it? Isn't that why the world's oceans look blue? Because from the depth, all the light's been absorbed and it's reflecting the colour back through. That's why the oceans look blue. So I'm told, don't quote me on that for God's sake. But it also absorbs light at a given ratio. Yeah? At the surface you're getting 100% of the light. At 10 metres you're getting half of it, 50%. Down from that you're getting a quarter. Another 10 metres you're getting 12.5. It halves every 10 metres. Yeah? So from 100% to 50%, it then halves to 25%, halves to 12.5%. Next one's going to be 6.25. Nice one as a mathematician. You're an accountant. As light passes through the water column, colour and light are absorbed by the density of the water and also the suspended particles that are in it. As I've just explained, red's the first colour to disappear, blue's the strongest colour and actually isn't absorbed. Well, it is, it just turns black. Once you get that deep, there's no light at all. And particulates reflect and scatter light even in what you perceive to be the best vids you've ever seen. Which is pretty good actually for underwater photography, not. As soon as you add artificial light, i.e. strobe light, then you can restore the full spectrum of colour and record it on your camera. And there's an example, another one of my good shots. Straight away you can see that reds, oranges, yellows, they've all disappeared because of the colour absorption through the depth, leaving just greens, blues and cyans. We're at that depth, yeah? As soon as you put a strobe on it, different reef scene, all the colours have been restored. With the use of artificial strobe, you can see my strobe on my left was quite strong. Yeah, it's a wide angle shot. Got an awful lot to get in there, haven't you, to cover with your strobes. Works though. I've explained how I meter for my shots. I'm going to explain again in a sec with another slide. But this is a metered shot. What I do is I just switch the strobes off because I don't want to waste the battery power. And I meter for the background and I take a photograph. This was a photograph of Samut, you know, without the top railings. There's my dive guide out in Bali. So I metered for the background, and that was actually, you know, I'd normally delete that shot, but I decided to keep that for this talk. That was clever of me, wasn't it? There's a nice shoulder trevally behind him. And then I added strobe light. The background is identical. And if you think that's the same photograph, it's not, by the way.
What depth are you?
They're about 18, no, about 22, 23 metres. Yeah, 22, 23 metres. You can see it's different, there's no position and all the rest of it. But the two shots, as a process of shots, I'll meter for the background and not use the strobe. The strobe batteries don't last as long as the camera battery.
Oh, sorry,
Beer time! Nothing more. Come on, grab a
He
seat.
hasn't told us yet, we're hoping he will.
More, I have a message for you. But I'll chat to you, I won't embarrass you, I'll chat to you in the break.
Who's it from?
A very good friend of yours. If you want to take good photographs, I'm shot to shit now, aren't I?
I'm really worried he's coming.
If you
Drink now.
You've lost your flow.
I have, yeah. If you want to take good photographs underwater, the best thing to do is to reduce the amount of water you're taking your photograph from. Yeah? And the only way to do that is to get much closer to your subject. If you can reduce the water column between you, your camera lens, and the subject you want, remember that from your strobes, your light has got to go from the strobe to your subject and back to your lens, and then before it strikes your sensor. The water's going to absorb the light on the way there and on the way back. So you might only be taking a photograph from a metre away, but the light's got to travel 2 metres before it hits your sensor. Yeah? And that could be a problem with it absorbing it. If you reduce that metre to half a metre, you've got twice the light. I'll explain in a bit more depth. But if you're taking photographs through water, we always know that if you reduce, I am shot to bits, I'm sorry. if you reduce the distance between your strobe, your lens and your subject, you'll minimise colour loss straight away because you'll get brighter light from your strobes onto it. You'll minimise light loss, diffusion, and refraction because none of that will happen. A small amount of water between your lens and your subject. Yeah, and your light absorption. If you think you're close. And here's the secret, if you think you're close, you've heard this, haven't you? Yeah. Do you know, it's so true. It is so true. And teaching somebody to improve their photography, I'm not talking about getting blistering prints that National Geographic are going to want to buy. What I'm talking about is just improving your image making. The difference can be as little as that. And maybe that. Get slightly underneath it and a bit closer. And that's the difference. Yeah? That's the shoulder catfish, which is actually quite a nice little ball of catfish, isn't it? Can you see all right there?
Yeah, fantastic.
But that's much nicer as a portrait shot of a load of catfish. Would you agree? So get closer. So what have we learned so far? We need light.
Did they pose?
Yeah, they did. We need light, and we need lots of it because of the amount that's going to be absorbed by the water, and we need to get close. What we need to do is actually learn how to control backscatter. Backscatter is just your worst ever nightmare. But before we discuss backscatter, let's talk about the inverse square law. Has anybody ever heard of that? Who said yeah?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
As it falls off proportional to the square of the distance between the object and subject.
Oh yes.
Used to be
Say
what
They sound like that.
That's
An object twice the distance from a light source will receive a quarter of the light. Yeah? So, can you see the ball here that's lit? Yeah? That ball is twice the distance away, and guess what? It's only getting, you think it's going to get half the light, it gets a quarter of the light. So the further away you go, the light falls off very, very quickly. Yeah? That's an important thing to know, isn't it? Especially when it comes to backscatter. So what is backscatter? A Raspberry shot. My mate Chrissy saw it. Well, I think it's dive mastering down there at the moment. Or was he an AOI or something, Chris?
I haven't seen him down.
No.
I haven't been down recently, so.
So, Hey, that took some time in for me to get that shot through my camera with his strobe going. What do you think? Actually, we just put his strobe on slave mode. So I've exposed his hands through my strobe. But what I want to explain was, look at the beam of light coming from it. This area, yeah, obviously that's the light in the strobe, but this area away from it is very burnt out, and you can see the particulate there, can't you? Yeah? That's the problem, and that's what causes you the problem with backscatter. That, well, in fact, the area you can see there. Obviously there's more light spilling out of it, but it's not lighting the particulate like that. Why? Because of the inverse square law. So what we can do, I'll just explain what that is. I've said it's the worst enemy going, right? But it's defined as the illumination of the suspended particles in the water. And the hot spot emitted from the centre of the strobe is reflected off each particle and shows in your final image. And believe you me, I've got some fabulous shots that are ruined by backscatter. No amount of Photoshop can get rid of it. Just no, I mean, it's a nightmare. How would you get rid of all those little dots? But it just wouldn't bother with you. You just move your strobe and have another go. I think that you can reduce backscatter just by intelligent thinking about where you place your strobes before you take the photograph. And here's an example. This is my housing, by the way, or picture of it. Yeah. Looking from the top, the strobes are pointing directly at the subject, exactly as you'd expect. Yeah. If I did that and then fired them off, what I would get is extremely hot spots here. And that would illuminate that particulate exactly as you've seen with Chrissy Saret's camera, or his strobe. And the problem is, if I'm using a lens that's wide enough to get that in, yeah, this area is going to show in my photograph as backscatter. An example, Geraldine Boisier, in her lap, beautiful dappled light, but look, poor position in the strobes. Fabulous shot, especially that dappled light as a portrait of a diver, but guess what? Absolutely crap, and I couldn't be bothered to process it because of the backscatter. So what did I do?
You crop it.
Yeah. I put it on my computer and I use it as a PowerPoint to show what not to do. Yeah, cropped it. What I tend to do is I use what's called the edge lighting technique. Yeah. And what that is basically is just using the clean edge of the beam to illuminate the subject, not the hot central part. And what it does is it significantly reduces backscatter, but also gives softer lighting, i.e. softer shadows, not harsh shadows. You asked me about shadows earlier. Yeah? It reduces the harsh shadows, and it also gives softer lighting and a wider beam, to be truthful. And this is how I do it. I just flick the strobes out. Now they're not pointing directly at the subject, they're pointing slightly away from the subject. Yeah? So now, instead of using the centre part of that beam, I'm just using the edges of it to light it. Listen, the backscatter's still there. I'm never going to stop that. Now the hot spots from the centre of the strobes are still going to light up the particulate in the water. But it's not going to be seen. So, rather than crop it, you just take it again after moving the strobes.
He was first.
Okay. So rather than crop it, and actually it's a better shot because her stream of bubbles aren't interfering with that lovely sunburst.
So does that mean basically you have to have two strobes?
No, use one.
If you just one, angle it slightly away from the...
If you're using a single strobe, you'd put it above the camera because that mimics natural light, doesn't it? You put it above the camera. If you put it to one side, you're going to get harsh shadows. Yeah. If you put it at the top, you're going to get what look like natural shadows from natural light. That's exactly as you'd expect to see the image. I put them
with backscatter issue. Would you still angle it not quite centre?
Watch. You pull them back.
Oh, okay.
So now they're pulled right back. Yeah. And again, with the single lens, with a single strobe, you still angle it away. You don't ever point your strobe back directly at the subject. Yeah.
So that's different to what they tell you on the photography book.
Well, they're not doing it right, are they?
That's
That's why they're not making a living at it.
I'm trying to think back, and it's not very easy to remember. But I can't quite remember about the angle that.
Not many people do this. What I do, and the reason you know that is because on the front of most strobes now is an LED focus light or aiming light, which means you have the light and you aim it at the subject. Yeah, and you light the subject, more egg in this case, and you can take a photograph of it because you can get her in focus because the lenses are going to hunt in dark light to get focus. What the hell's the point of having a pointing light, a focus light on a strobe that you're actually going to have to end up pointing directly at the subject? You're going to get backscatter. By pulling the strobes back, guess what? The backscatter's still there, but it's behind you, and you can get away with using much wider angled lenses. Yeah? What about macro? You need to tuck the strobes in quite tight with macro. You don't need to. I like to. I like to bring the strobes in quite tight to the camera. Have one on half the power of the other one, so I'm not getting really harsh shadows to one side, softer shadows as you'll see in some of the macro shots. But I like the front lighting. With macro, you're normally looking at a black background, or you're not looking for blue water backgrounds with macro. You're looking for a black background to isolate the subject, or you're looking at a natural, nice, I don't know, something like that. Some really good negative space to oh, what have I done? Some really good negative space to take the photograph. Yeah? So you're not really worried about ambient light with macro, so you can tuck your strobes in a little bit tighter. But if you do, you're going to get the light on the subject, yeah? And you're going to be also closer to the subject, so less water between you and the lens. Again, try and hit it with the edge of the beam. Now you'll still have the backscatter, but because a macro lens has got a much shallower angle of view, you ain't going to see the backscatter. And if you do, just either pull them back or tuck them out a little bit. And that's the idea of, if you bring some photographs for me to critique, I'd have gone, you need to move your strobe because of the backscatter. I don't need to tell you that now, do I? You'll take the photograph, looking at your LCD screen and go, oh, I need to pull that strobe out of the way and take another shot, as I did with Geraldine. Yeah? And here's the problem with your compacts. Yeah, it's just a representation of a compact from above with the flash, the strobe built into it. You cannot move it. So you will always get backscatter. Always, 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 always get backscatter of one form or another. At Raspberry you're going to get an absolute shed full of it because of the suspended particles. And in the Maldives, in the Red Sea, you will get some. And it might ruin your shot. Get an external strobe. It's the only way to improve your... God, do I work for a strobe company? No, I don't. I like to place my strobes behind my macro lens. And the reason for that is, if I put them in that position, they're closer to the subject. And the subject is going to back off a little bit, I want my lens to be the closest thing to them. So I pull them back a little bit. And it also reduces backscatter. Just a little tip. I like my little top tips. Here we go. Two types of lighting for your photography. Balanced light, imaging. Shown you how I've described how I did that earlier with a photograph of Samut. I meter for somewhere in the mid blue, not the dark blue, not the light blue, the mid blue. And I set my depth of field, I set my aperture to give me whatever depth of field I want for the shot. In this case, I wanted to get some texture on the surface. Yeah? So I've trying to get a huge depth of field here. So I've squeezed the aperture down, which means to get that exposure right, I've got to slow down my shutter speed. Or up my ISO, but not underwater, so we slow down our shutter speed. I like to go, I've found through experience actually, if I go about half a stop under what the correct exposure should be, I get much better exposed blue background. And then I literally just use the strobes, wind up or wind down the power, to paint the subject with light. What do you think of the shot, guys? Bunaka National Marine Park, Sulawesi, nice. Full of it.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
When you're taking a photograph out of water,
Yeah. Huh?
depending on
I think my manager needs to take this one.
you depending on the light,
Yeah.
you can either focus the lens on the darkest area
Yeah.
and it will illuminate the picture.
What you're talking about is having it on an auto setting.
If it's auto, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
use auto settings,
No,
I
but
always use manual.
if you
so
are
I really
underwater
don't know what
and
you're
you're
saying.
using auto
Yeah.
setting, where's the best point to focus on underwater?
Okay, then you need This is a difficult one because if you have any of your cameras
You
set up
don't
on
know
auto,
how to do all this
no,
kind of
that's
stuff.
okay. If you have it set on auto, it will expose for whatever's in that little square that's taking the focal point. So your metering is done through whatever you're using to focus with. Now, if you're doing that underwater, what's the most important part of your subject to get exposed correctly? And that's got to be the subject, not the negative space. Would I be correct?
Yeah.
If you were to do this, expose that, or meter that with a compact camera, or with a camera set on auto, yeah, it picked that out as perfect. But because that's going to be very dark until you fit it with a strobe, this is going to be absolutely white.
Average it.
And so you need to average it out, you're right, yeah. The most important thing to get the exposure right on isn't the background, is it? It's got to be the subject. So what you'd have to do is start thinking, hey, I need to turn my back to the bright light. Or start taking photographs of that against the darker background. You know, and rethink the way that you need to take your photographs. But hey, it's really easy nowadays, isn't it? Take a photograph, look at it, think, hey, that ain't right. I need to adjust that a little bit, take another one. Be your best own critique.
Yeah, because otherwise it's really for a week. Yeah. And to me, that's just
is composition, which is, and I'm sorry to rush, but this is quite a big portion of the presentation, and I kind of chatted away too long on the first half, to be honest. But what I want to talk to you now about is about composition, and as I said before the break, it doesn't matter whether you've got the right settings, whether you've got the best gear on the planet. If you don't get your composition right, you can end up with an average, run-of-the-mill or worse photograph. And that's not what it's about, is it? We want to get the best shot we possibly can with our ability and with the equipment that we've got. And we can use basic compact cameras and get real just by understanding a bit about composition and getting good negative space, get the subject in the right place in the frame for that particular subject, and using various rules. The one thing about rules is they're there to be broken. And during the break, Ben was just saying to me about the rule of thirds, which is the first slide I'm going to put up actually. But he said, you know, that's not quite rule of thirds, is it?
Almost.
Is it almost? Not quite.
It's not quite a bit
No,
lower, isn't it?
but the composition's nice, and what I like to do, and as I'll discuss later on when we talk about negative space, I like to give, as best as I can, my subject a little bit of room to move. Therefore, in front of the head of the subject, this side, I'd like to give more room. And that's a good example of that. Yes, okay. Sorry to start without you, but I need to get cracking, otherwise we won't be home till midnight. They'll be chucking us out, chucking out time. That's, God, I can't remember when that happened to me in a pub. Okay, let's talk about the rule of thirds. That's classic rule of thirds. What is the rule of thirds? If we dissect that into 9 squares, yeah, using a grid, really what we want is the point of interest, i.e. the subject's eyes, his face, to be at any of these intersecting lines. That's classic rule of thirds. Yeah? Do you want to have a look at a few examples? Not quite exactly rule of thirds. Actually getting the subject exactly there, no problem. Roughly, isn't it? But again, I've given the subject room to move. This image is actually being displayed as we speak in the Turkish equivalent of the Natural History Museum in London, but in Turkey. Yeah, how did that happen? It's taken into that. And in competition. Now, most of the judges that were judging the competition were Israelis. Normally, I'd like my subject to be on the left-hand side. Why? Because as Europeans, we read from left to right. In Israel, they read from right to left. And that's why they were quite taken with the subject. I was second in the competition, but I didn't get the trip to Fiji. and that was taken in the media section of the LRPS issue. Another example of rule of thirds, classic rule of thirds. Nice shot taken at 1-to-1 macro. I do like the clownfish, but you know they are really difficult to get a decent shot at clownfish. They flit all over the place. So I'll explain a bit later on my approach to taking photographs of clownfish. Quite simplistic actually, and it works with any species of fish that flit around reefs. Now there's another type of composition, and if the subject's strong enough, the shadow of the turtle, this is through the removed, if you like, gun turret on a wreck. Again, this one was taken in Israel, and I think the wreck's called the Satil. But they took the gun turret out, and that's actually the hole that it left. Yeah. Now that's what's called a bullseye shot. The main subject is smash in the middle of the frame. The subject has to be strong to do that. You have to pick a strong subject to be able to get a bullseye shot, and to pull it off anyway. Yeah. Here's another example.
Were you waiting for that one, or was it?
That was
chance?
pure luck.
Chance.
Listen, this photography game is 1% skill,
Yeah.
50% being in the right place at the right time, and 49% luck. Yeah?
What percentage of that is it?
0. Doesn't matter what you use, does it? If you get close enough, get the light right, and get the composition right, you're looking at good images, and that's all you need to improve. This one's a bullseye shot. It's actually a parrotfish eye. Quite a nice subject, isn't it? Yeah? Quite a nice shot. Dead easy to get. Go on a night dive where the parrotfish live, because they go to sleep at night. You can get really close. But I think the eye itself, and the details in the eye, are strong enough to be able to stick smash in the middle of the frame. As is that bubble coral shrimp with the eggs in it. You know, bullseye shots, smash in the middle of the frame. Now that's got lots of other aspects to it, but the main subject that you're looking at isn't the anemone or the black background, it's that little skunk or pink anemone fish. And that happens to be smash in the middle of the frame. So there's two types of composition that we discussed so far, isn't there? Straight away, the rule of thirds, which I think is the best composition, to be truthful. And if you're creative with it, you can give your subject room to move. So if you put it, if it's a fish and it's swimming from left to right, put it in the bottom right hand corner. Sorry, put it in the bottom left hand corner. So it's swimming into loads of space. There's a really nice bullseye shot. Strong subject, black background, taken on reef in Bali. It's a reef squid. It's blue because I had the strobe really high on it and it illuminated the blue water through it. But the eyes aren't. But it lends itself to bullseye composition. Yeah? Somebody said to me earlier about composing, and I do it in camera. Now what I do, that's bullseye. I don't want bullseye. When I flick the camera, half press the shutter, I get displayed 50, because it's a Nikon, I get displayed 51 focal points. The middle one is a cross point. And that's the one I've used to focus in. Now if you only ever use that one focal point, and you've got to focus on the eyes, if you don't get the eyes sharp, the photograph's worthless. So you're focusing on the eyes. If you do that every single time, you're going to end up with enemies like that, with it smash in the middle. Bullseye shot every time. So what do? Well, you can use the joypad and move the focal point. Yeah, and I've moved it down to here in this particular image, which is actually how I took the shot. Actually, it wasn't, but that's the composition of the original shot. You can move it down to there and use that to focus. But these focal points on the edge aren't as accurate, to be truthful. The ones in the centre are the cross-type sensors, and they're more accurate. Ones around the edge, Steve's got that smug look on his face, because his Canon are all cross-type sensors. The ones around the edge aren't as, but he's only got 30 of them. Yeah. Ones around the edge aren't as sensitive, and you're not likely to get really sharp focus on that point. So what I do instead is, I focus using the middle one. I press this button here, it says AFL, autofocus lock, and it locks the focal point, locks it, and then I just move the camera to get the correct exposure, and that's the end result. Yeah? Classic rule of thirds. What a nice shot, male anthea. Female anthea, sorry. I think the male anthea's got different colours to it. So what we've discussed so far, bullseye, rule of thirds. How about diagonals? That's a pretty simplistic reef shot. I think that one's taken at Woodhouse or Jackson's Reef in the Straits of Turan. Diagonal. Really easy to get a diagonal. Yeah, with the main subject is that
Going that
Gorgonian.
way.
Yeah, with the main subject is that Gorgonian, so yeah. But the diagonal, I like diagonals. And they're really easy to achieve underwater because if you're on the wall, especially taking wide angle reef shots, you're going to get some diagonals in it. There we go. 200 shots before I got that one. Poor thing, it wasn't blind. Much. It's a mature river nil. Actually, that wasn't 200 shots. I'll show you the one I took the 200 shots off to get the shot. River nil. Yeah, but look, diagonal. Diagonally through the image. Bullseye shot, but diagonal. Harlequin shrimp. On its start, yeah. Diagonal. And an enemy shrimp. You've got diagonals all through the image, but the subject's diagonal. More anemones and clownfish. These are false clownfish. Diagonal. Classic. 2 diagonals in that. The turtle's coming down diagonally, and the Jack Trevally are coming the opposite way. Quite a nice shot. Well, I think so. That's my opinion. Nobody actually thinks of that, do they? I want to sell it. So people need to look at that and go, oh, that's a nice shot, Nigel. Well done. Eye contact, really important. Here I've used it offset. Do you remember I said, nothing worse than diving with a macro lens and coming across this huge Napoleon wrasse that actually wants to interact with you. This is it. What do you think?
That's brilliant.
Lovely texture in its body. And the image of the eye. And the eyes have a really weird shape on the old Napoleon fish. Eye contact, really important. That's a really boring damselfish. But because the eyelids are yellow against the blue, makes for the photograph. If those eyes weren't that colour when they were out of focus, wouldn't be worth even showing you tonight. You need to make sharp contact with the eyes. Now, very little of this image is in focus, but that plane across there is. Make the eye contact. We've all seen that, we've dived the Red Sea. Crocodile fish eye, only that one was taken in Indonesia. Yeah, I like eyes. I've got to say, you've got to get them in focus. How about that? 3 eyes on that one. 2 for the shrimp and 1 for the fish. Now here's something that a lot of people don't even consider when they're looking at composing their shots, and that's colour composition. Now underwater we're really lucky because we've got this stunning blue background we can use. Maybe a green background if we're muddy green background if we're diving in a lake in the UK, maybe near Heathrow. But what I'm talking about here is if you use opposite sides of the spectrum, that's a spectrum curved into a ball, so we've got blues one side, blues and greens if you like, cyans one side, and then the reds through the yellows the other side. Yeah. So if I want to get the best colour composition that I can, I'd want to pick a colour there, if that was in the subject, but I want to pick a colour completely opposite to pick it out. And here's an example. Yellows and oranges against the blue background. Yellows and oranges against that portion of blue background. See, it matches. How about that? Pinks and oranges against the blue background. Where are we? That area there, aren't we? Pinks and oranges against that blue background. It can be really subtle. An orange clownfish against the blue background. Now I've doubled it up here. I've got green against the red. Yeah, so this area green against the reds, and then the reds against the green area dappled light. I think this was at dawn, first thing in the morning. And that one, well, it's got every colour of. You pick any colour in there, it's in that photograph. Male Anthea taken in the Red Sea. So that's something to consider, isn't it? Colour composition. But you never thought of that. Ben? No. Right, I've been talking loads and loads about negative space tonight. What is it? Negative space is everything that's not the main subject. Get your negative space right and your photograph will always look good as long as it's sharp and reasonably exposed. You get your negative space right, you get a much better photograph. You notice on all my images, If I've got poor negative space, I'll make it black. If I've got good negative space, I'll show it in the image. Can you see that? Yeah? I'll show it in the image. Cluttered backgrounds ruin photographs. It's a really nice shot of a lionfish, isn't it? But wow, what a crap shot. You know, if you want to take a photograph of a lionfish, don't have it against that background. Wait a bit later on in the day when they're more active and they're up in the water and get a better shot of them. Remember the shot I took right at the beginning? I showed you right at the beginning with the dappled light, the sunlight? That's a much better way. Why is that a better shot than that? It's the same subject.
It's less busy.
It's less busy, much better background. We've got all that blue water, and blue water that's the 100 shot. That's the 100 shot black ribbon eel. The blue water. So I've got underneath it and I've got it against a blue water background. Wow. It's just a bloody ribbon eel. But wow. Don't you think? I do. You can use dark negative space to add more impact. Now I'm not talking about black, just making the whole thing black like I do on most of my macro shots, but just a portion of it, darken it down. You know, nice seal shot taken in Banarkin, I think. And if you have got poor negative space but you really want to take the photograph, open up your aperture. Reduce your depth of field and make everything behind it out of focus. Like that. Classic rule of thirds. But everything is out of focus, even its back fins, even its front fins. But its eyes are sharp, so is its nose. And I've said about giving the subjects room to move. They don't normally live in open blue water, actually. Am I naughty? And I didn't pick it up and put it in the water, by the way.
What was that?
I was taking photographs. I had a fisheye lens on. This is taken with a fisheye lens. These are cleaner shrimp and they're tiny. I was taking photographs near the reef, and my dive guide pointed this cleaner shrimp, and I rested my camera down on the sand, and I was watching this cleaner shrimp, you know, and it's crawled onto my bone ball. So I just gently lifted it up, pulled it back, it swam off, I went click, and it just swam back. I thought, well, nice shot. You can use what I call creative negative space, and a good way of doing that is to make your bits stand out. This is an elphinstone. You make your coral stand out. It's not a very good example, to be honest, but to render the reef wall that your strobe light's not hitting black. Yeah, that's not that creative. What I've done there to create decent negative space is thrown a diver silhouette in, so I've got some diver to pose for me. Yeah. So we're using dark negative space to emphasise the subject, but we're throwing in a diver silhouette, and it gives more depth to it. Don't you agree? Here's an example of using creative negative space. On the right hand side is Snell's window, the curve of Snell's window. On the left hand side is the top of the reef. So obviously I'm looking straight up underneath this coral. But I loved it. It looks like a crown, a golden crown on this like pink face. But why I've included this image in this presentation is because I've managed to get almost a full circle there using the reef and Snell's window. And another example of using the reef for negative space, doesn't that look like somebody pointing down at that shoulder fish? And I saw that and I thought, oh wow, just underexpose a little bit, which is easy when you've got the sunball in, because you need to underexpose, otherwise the sunball's going to get burnt out. Use a diagonal shoulder chromis that normally live in that coral, wait for them to come up above, take the shot. But is he pointing at me? Sure he is. No, this. Now, here's a complicated thing. Negative space is everything that's not the main subject. So, what's the negative space in that one? Is it the anemone, or is it the clownfish? That's food for thought, isn't it? Nice shot though. Well, I think so. How do you get a shot like that with a clownfish? Patience and timing, but knowing your subject. And the way to do it, and I've said this right the way through, find an area of really good negative space and wait for your subject to come to you. Yeah. This shot, I found this little area of the anemone. This anemone fish kept coming back looking. It's a skunk anemone fish. Kept coming up looking at me, and then darting off again. So I focused on it, and I stayed there. I don't know, quarter of an hour. I realised that the subject would come back. I preset all my exposure, everything. Took a couple of test shots, got the exposure right, and just waited for him to swim into it. Yeah. If you chase a subject with your camera, you're going to get loads of photographs of fish's arses. You won't get the fish to look at it. And I've got bucket loads of them, honestly. Fish are shot. Find really good negative space and just be patient and wait for your subject to swim into it. That's the way to go. Okay, have you learned anything so far, guys? Has this been beneficial evening for you? I was going to ask you at this stage, how am I doing? Because I'm actually getting exhausted. Am I Something that's really difficult to get in a photograph and make it work underwater is a sunball. Yeah? And the reason being is the digital cameras have got very limited dynamic range. And they're unable to record details from very bright subjects. And all it does is it just blows them out. It either clips the highlights or blows the subject out. And here's some ways of getting over it. We can hide the sun behind the subject. So get somebody or a fish or whatever to swim between the sun and you, or get low and get a bit of reef behind, so it's behind the reef. We can exclude it altogether and just get the sun rays, as in here, yeah? Or we can go out early morning and late evening because the sun's lower and it refracts more light off the surface, giving just dappled light through the water. You've seen quite a few examples of that so far. Remember, hey, backscatter's our friend. Suspended particles enhance the light rays. You can see the light rays coming through here. That's only because there's suspended particles in there. Yeah? And if we use fast shutter speeds, because the sun rays are moving as they come through the water ripples, we can freeze them better. So faster shutter speed's always good. Here's an example, Elphinstone again. Ugh, look at that horrible ball of light. Just move around the reef a little bit and you lost it. And it actually makes the water glow behind it, don't you think? How about that? Doesn't that starfish look like somebody's doing a handstand? But the sunball's a nightmare. Yeah, like morph, nice one. So I've moved around a little bit. Unfortunately, I've had to compromise here. I didn't want the sunball, but I couldn't get the full bit of the starfish doing his handstand without the sunball.
Can you just drop it a bit lower?
Yeah, tried to. There's all reef underneath me, don't want to be touching that. This is a photograph of my mate Rod Jeans taking a master alarm. Just move him a little bit. Much better. Yeah? Much better. Some examples from me. Hide the sunburst behind a boat. That's always a good one. Especially if you can get Snell's window in. And that lovely shoal of fish. Cool shot. Or just take it out using, I don't know, whatever that is, a bristle star. Sorry, a crinoid. Yeah? And look at the light rays from it. Nice. And my trademark, Snell's window. I do like Snell's window. Yeah, okay, it's a fish's arse. But I hit the sun behind it, and it is a bumphead parrotfish after all. Now, you don't need the light rays in, or the sunball. If you're shallow enough, you can get that nice dappled light, you know, that you see on the bottom, refracted from the surface. Some mangroves out in Sulawesi. Sunballs. I actually sold that as a cover shot for Veals. Are you ready for this? Angling equipment, mail order catalogue. In their parlance, the GT, the Giant Trevally, is a sportfish. Like, they asked me if they could buy that, and have a look at my website. I said, "Won't buy it." Yeah, of course you can. I'm not proud of it, guys. I tell you, I'm not proud. I'd rather be blinding them with my strobes than sticking hooks on them. Recognise that? It's raspberry. Yeah, of course it is. But look at the sun rays. How nice is that? And dawn and dusk light. You can capture it without the full-blown white burnout. and it changes the colour. This is proper dappled light taken in the Red Sea, obviously, because the blue banded angelfish. Dappled light, much nicer to take a shot of. Lionfish, find good negative space and find something to put in it. Way I compose my wide angle shots, actually what's going through my mind, yeah? I need to get underneath the subject. Because my trademark is to have a fair bit of blue on the wide angle, have a fair bit of blue water in the shot and capture a bit of Snell's window. Just said that, haven't I? I like to compose the shot with the sunball out of the frame because I don't want that horrible white blob, but I do want the light rays, if I can get them. A lot of people get the sun behind them and take a shot. I'm one of those photographers that can cope with the light, and I want to force myself to take photographs into the light because the effect is much better. Yeah? I like to use a smaller aperture to get bigger depth of field to give texture on the surface. You know, so that's my thought process, looking into it. And then I expose, mid-water, using a spot meter, half a stop under. I've set my depth of field using the aperture. I expose for that blue water now by just changing my shutter speed, faster or slower, depending on how much light I want to come through. And I dial the strobes up to give me the effect I want. Paint the subject of light. It's not that difficult, is it? Remember what I said right at the beginning? If it was difficult, no one would be doing it. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. How many did you play the violin? No.
Sorry, is that sort as well?
That's why I asked you. Violin's really difficult to play. That's why nobody in this room can plays a violin. Photography, piece of piss. That's why everyone's got a camera. Diver portraits. You can just take photographs of divers in the water, and normally they're going, do you really want that? Do you really want a photograph of you in the water going, so you can show the world, I'm a diver? Of course you don't. You want something like that, don't you? Yeah? Lucky shot, don't you think? Taken at, it was in the Maldives, I can't remember, Shark Reef in the Maldives. He disturbed that triggerfish, and it was just a lucky shot, really. But even without it, it would have looked like that. That's not the same diver. Much, you don't say. He just got that skin-coloured hood on. But when you when you compose for the diver shots, you want to make them look interesting, don't you? You do not want. Do you? I don't know. Maybe that's why you want to take your photos. So you want to add a bit of flair to it, make them a little bit different. Or get them in a subject. That was actually a cover shot on Diving Mag. Yeah, which is quite nice. And the remora's trying to attach himself. I've got a photograph of him like this, with the remora attached. And Steve Wyman, the editor of Diving Mag, would not publish it for love nor money. But what's nice about that shot is I've got the text on the surface and I've got a bit of Snell's window, and the sunball is actually behind him, and that's what makes the water glow. Yeah, nice sweeping, doesn't really show it on the screen, nice sweeping shoulder glassfish. That's a much better portrait, isn't it? No, I haven't. These are different.
Different.
The other one, yeah, come on. It is big. And it makes it look big. It is big. She's Italian. It's tight. You bouncing like a... Anyway. Diver composition. Do you want the photograph just of the diver, or do you want something in the foreground? Yeah? Which makes it look interesting. I'll get rid of that. By the way, did any of you guys notice that the horizon was crooked on that over under? I didn't think so. Let me just go back. Look how crooked that horizon is.
I'm not right.
Who cares? What? Actually, they're very sellable shots. Very, very sellable shots. What do they show? Right. Not holiday snaps, but they're idealistic snorkeling on holiday. They're very, very sellable shots. Put the diver in the frame. These are diver portraits, yeah? But the second one there, the one on the right, isn't quite a diver portrait, but the shape of the diver adds real emphasis to the photograph, I think. Adds a bit of movement to it. What this one? It's been published. What do you think?
Awesome.
Awesome. Do you know, I gave this presentation to Newbury Camera Club, and this one photograph had them all go, "Whoa!" Kathy McCartney, who's now living in Perth, she was a dive master working at LRPS for a while, wasn't she, Steve? She's a paramedic, and that was taken out. The Thames at Abingdon.
It's atmospheric, right?
It's atmospheric.
Yeah, you haven't got any sun.
What's really good about that shot, what makes that shot, and what made it a jaw dropper at the Newbury Camera Club, is the sky and how angry it looks, and that V coming down, yeah? And the fact that that is dark as hell and looking really angry. Look at the reflections of her and the bubbles on the surface. And that's what makes the shot, and the river going around the corner. Yeah? All right, I'll let you into a little secret. It's taking a race. Composition. Yeah, if you want to take good photographs, this is the holy grail. Behavioural shots. Really important. If you can get these, you're cooking on gas. The best place to look is at cleaning stations. Yeah. This one, batfish being cleaned by a cleaner lass. Wow. Nice shot, don't you think? Technically, crap. Compositionally, really nice. You need a keen eye, and you really need to understand what's going on at these cleaning stations or when animals are interacting. And if you do, this isn't a cleaning station, if you know what you're looking for, you can pick out shots like this. That fin is fanning those eggs, and she's underneath that anemone fish. Yeah, and it's a Maldivian anemone fish. She's got black pectoral fins. Black caudal fins. Nice, eh? Different. How about that?
You're saying, my nose is itching.
Yeah. I called that place the Shrimp Party, Scuba Soraya. And that, I didn't want that moray to be there ever. I wanted one of those tiger morays, you know, with the really big long teeth and the spots. They look really good with cleaner shrimp on them. Didn't see one. I've been there 4 weeks over 2 trips and I haven't seen one yet. Not at that cleaning station. But I did see that, and this is the cleaning station. Look at all these inch beaks everywhere, and that's a proper cleaner shrimp, you know, going for it. Interaction. Shrimp goby. That goby lives in a burrow with that shrimp. The shrimp cleans it, the burrow, is blind, is warned by that of any disturbances, yeah? It keeps the burrow clean, tidy and healthy place to live, and that feeds it through its feces. Not particularly nice, but hey, that's the way it is. But when you see them together, isn't that nice? And really difficult shot to capture, simply because they are so skittish. Again, that's taken with a macro lens and I'm about as close as this to get the shot. Ooh. And then they're gone. One shot, they're gone. You only get one chance of that. Worth the wait though. Worth stalking.
So did you stayed and waited for it, did you?
No, I approached it really slowly. I held my breath.
Oh. Do you want to rebreathe it or open it?
Open circuit. I ain't taking a rebreather to Indonesia. I can't afford to. It's open circuit. Oh, I naughty boy.
And how deep were you?
About 15 metres from that. This next shot, I nearly died to get. This is taken at 40 metres. Yeah, literally. This is taken at 40 metres. I racked up 20 minutes of decompression, and I left the bottom. I've already told you this, haven't I? On 15 bars. Luckily, we'd already arranged for them to have a hand tank waiting for me, just in case. I did have that in the back of my mind, actually. Wouldn't that have been a good shot if that fish, that grouper, because inside their mouths is pure white, you know, wouldn't that have been a good shot, a much better shot if the mouth was open? But the cleaner shrimp's clawing, that's the same cleaner shrimp that's in Samut's mouth. So I just waited and waited and waited, you know, and eventually, know, it's me. Now, wouldn't that have been much better if his mouth was wide open? That's why I nearly died getting the shot. But I don't care. What a cracker. Yeah, what an absolute cracking shot. And that was worth the wait. Right, something that's close to my heart, image manipulation. What you see with my photographs is virtually what you get.
But your thirds.
Yeah, but I'm talking about manipulating the shots now, using Photoshop or whatever. I'm quite skillful in Photoshop, thanks to Steve, because he's awesome at it and he teaches me everything, you know, well, portions of it. There's stuff he doesn't want me to know, I'm sure. But Steve teaches me enough for me to get by. I can remember as a kid seeing a photograph, it just blew me away. It was a horrible black and white shot taken in London on a really busy, horrible, grey, wet, rainy day. So what you got, these grey buildings, a horrible grey sky, and a sea of people under their umbrellas, all in black and white, except for one umbrella that was red. And it was done on the Robert Thurs thing, and it absolutely, whoa, that's a bloody good photograph. Do you know, I thought I'd apply that to my underwater shots. When you see that printed, the textures in it are amazing. I should have bought a copy of that tonight, actually, Steve, to show you. But the textures in that are amazing. So that's just manipulating using Photoshop. I haven't changed the image, I haven't taken anything in or anything out apart from the colour. But it works, doesn't it?
So you took it as a colour image?
Yeah, that's the original shot. I just rendered it in black and white and left these in colour. It works, doesn't it? Oh, Christ, I wanted this to be a cover shot for Diver Mag. There's no way that they're going to publish that with these steps and that railing. So I took it out. And I defy you to see that in print and actually know that that was the original shot.
You can see where you copied it from.
Copied it?
Well, you copied bits of it from.
Where?
Because that bit is that bit.
Ah.
Clone tool.
Content aware field. CS5. But, alright. Not giving him any money. No, he's nice. He's 6'4", I'm going to say. Size 13, 14. This is actually quite a nice shot of this particular white-eyed moray. It's only a little moray, it's not a big one, it's taken with a macro lens. Unfortunately, it was living in this really boring granite. So what can you do to make that an interesting shot? Zoom blur. I call that one coming at ya. And printed and framed, that looks stunning. So what have I done? It's obviously photoshopped, isn't it? I'm not hiding the fact I've photoshopped any of my images. That's obviously photoshopped. I'm trying to hide the fact for that because I was trying to sell it to Diver Mag, but I'm not hiding the fact that that's photoshopped. I'm proud that that's photoshopped. Zoom blur. Wow. Yeah? What an image. I've taken an average image. What have I done, guys? I've changed the boring negative space to good negative space.
That's an option on photograph.
Photoshop.
Well, Photoshop is it?
You have to do a fair bit of work to get to that.
I mean, can you do that on other software?
You can do it with
Casa?
you can do it with your camera lens. No, I doubt it. Casa. You can do it with your camera lens. You can't do it with Casa. This one, that's a nice shot, isn't it? That little blenny. I think that enhances it. And it was just a playing thing on wet pixel for me. Now that's the extent of my image manipulation really. I don't do a great deal with it. I might change the levels and curves and convert from RAW to JPEG. That's it. I don't, as I discussed earlier, I don't change my white balances. But what I can do with it, and I do like the monochrome images, if they are true black and white, without magenta colour casts or cyan colour casts, for you to understand that cyan is that horrible washed out blue colour and magenta is that horrible sort of purpley hue that you get to. This turtle, I just had to get a shot of it because it had turned away from me and was swimming, and it's very rare you see the whole thing, you know. But unfortunately, I had my camera set, remember I use all manual stuff, so the camera's not going to do anything for me. I had my camera set to take a portrait of a guy for his website, and the turtle swam around, I just panned around and took the shot. I thought, oh, I've wasted my time with that because look at the background, it's crap. But render it into black and white, and when you see that printed, that is as sharp as a sharp thing, and it really works. And the nice thing about a plain black background is you can extend it and add text to it. Yeah? Which brings me to this. And this is what I do now. Well, yes, my full-time employment, as I'm a pensioner and retired. I work for Diver magazine as a freelance photographer and photojournalist. I also work with John Banton, obviously, on the test team, and I've been taking loads of photographs of him. I mean, it's very difficult for him to get a photograph of himself doing his bits and pieces. So I take the photographs, and on your project, I'll probably come with you and take photographs of you and John together.
Really?
Yeah. Well, a few points. But I always have this in my mind that, you know, hey, that's a good image, I need that, I'll take that for publication. So I take a lot of my images in portrait format as opposed to landscape, yeah? Because that's the way magazines are laid out, unless you want a double page spread and then you need landscape. And I like to leave enough room for text. This one wasn't published, but just as an experiment. That's why I lay the photograph out or compose a photograph that way. And again, with that one, it leaves room, classic rule of thirds, leaves room for text. Yeah. This was a photograph that was published. This isn't a good rendering of it, unfortunately. Kath Bates from Camel Dive Club, John Banton, we were out testing 10 sets of legs in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2008, I think, 2009. But we wanted a shot for the magazine, and it had to have loads of negative space around it to take the text. That was actually published, I can't, was there a date on it in that? But that was actually published, I don't know, sense of algorithm, you probably read it, I don't know if you get Diver Mag. Please do. So this is some of the stuff I've had published. That's me, on the front cover of Diver Mag. We were doing some reg testing out in Taba, John and I. We were testing that mask, evaluating that mask, and he said to me, oh, I'm so bored with this. We need something different, a different perspective of taking photographs of this mask. What can we do? I said, John, I've got the ideal thing. You stick it on, because I wanted the cover shot, you see, thanks Steve. You stick it on, John, and what we do, we go out really early in the morning when the sun's low and straight in your face, and all I want you to do is just come out of the water and have the water flying off you, and I'll take the photograph. He said, oh, brilliant idea. So I did that, and he's gone, oh yeah, they're fabulous shots, but all my whiskers. So he said, I'll tell you what, Nigel, he said, say your hair's not all over the place, stick your hood on, yeah? And he said, I'll take the photographs of you tomorrow morning. Bastard. Well, that cost me 250 quid for the cover shot. Yeah, all right, it's massaging my ego because I'm on the cover, and that was actually the dive show edition, so they've got that blown up poster size all over the place at the dive show at the NEC last year. But that's not the point, is it? I want the cover shot. This is one I took of Kath Bates, and it managed to get onto the CDWS magazine on the front cover there. Also inside, Kath runs a regular article on tech diving, that's what she does. That's her, again, one of my shots taken with the bank of computers on the computer testing. Another one of Kath. Oh, look at that, photographs by Nigel Way. So the first one was Jargon Buster, this was another issue. Watching the girls go by with the shots on that I took of Kath. I managed to, at Raisby, take some photographs of Chrissy Syret and Mark Bruce doing their underwater bike ride for Help the Heroes. I actually wrote that little bit of an article and it went in, are you ready for this? Underwater photographs in the Globe and Laurel, the official Royal Marine Commandos magazine. I was really pleased with that. Not particularly good photographs, maybe it's Raisby, you know. Photographs I took of John and Dave Jones, who was here last week. Sorry, like your last presentation, yeah? Obviously John's on the right with the red bands and his silly ankle weights. I'm doing the side mount course at Bobsleigh. So that's one of my shots. That's an underwater shot of John and Dave. Those are all my shots, John. That appeared on Yorkshire Divers, do you remember that? I said I snuck up behind him. Oh, I saw that John Banton at Bobsleigh the other day, so I snuck up. Arrogant bastard, so I snuck up behind him and undid his cam bands. That'll teach him. Do you remember it? No, good.
Don't worry, I'll remind him.
No. Yeah, you'll know. Sorry, that's what I'm after. Front cover shot, you've already seen that. That was a March edition, this year's Diver magazine. accompanied a 4-page article I did about diving in martial alarm, about reef diving. I called it Light My Candle. Steve Wyman changed it to Light My Fire, because I was a fireman for 31 years. He thought that was clever in some shape or form. Yet the last words on it down here say, if reef diving lights your candle, the flame will burn brightly in martial alarm. The editor. Nice article though, and nice photographs. I was quite pleased with that. This was one I did as a technical article, my first technical article I've made about high-tech location devices for use in the Red Sea. Oh look! Stevie B! Unfortunately, I only took 2 photographs there. That one of Stevie B, who got battered at West Whitby getting that shot, and that one which was actually Banaka National Marine Park. But Tom, the art director, decided to make it look like we were looking through binoculars. Not very good. So to follow that up, in this month's Diver magazine, the one that's out now currently, I thought I'd do a bit on low-tech diver location devices. So I jumped on the boat with Ian Taylor, Skin Deeper, down at Weymouth, and some members of the Coram Dive Club. And took the photographs right there after that. Actually, it panned out really nice, I've got to say, it did pan out nice. So that's basically what I've had published so far this year. Next month I've got a bit on PADI, PADI are going solo diving. Oh, fantastic. And there'll be 4 pages about that, so pick that up and have a read. Think, oh, they're Nigel shots. Even the product shots are mine, and Sarah down at Rosebery. And listen, hey, this isn't one of you, is it? This guy in the yellow dry suit, it's not one of you guys, is it? Do you know him? I was down there taking photographs of John, wagging my red fin above his head, and this guy walked out of Rosebery like that. No scuba kit on. Honestly, no scuba kit on, just the yellow dry suit. I thought, oh, I've got to get a shot of you. I said, do you mind? I said, I just need some photographs for Diver Mag. And as it happens, I talked about these high resolution BCDs and suits. Perfect! What a twat. What do you think? Why, I said, why is your suit all yellow? He said, so I can be seen by the people on the boat. I thought, you twat. It's only that much above the water. What's he thinking? Anyway, shouldn't have taken off. Right. Guys, that's almost the end of the presentation. I'm going to show you a little slideshow of my favourites while I actually have a breather. Unless you want me to quickly talk you through them. No, good. I just want to show you some of my favourite shots, some of the shots that I took that I enjoy taking and I enjoy showing off, yeah? Before I do, what I want to say is firstly, thank you Andy for inviting me, and thank you guys for turning out for tonight. Do you know it's 10:30? I knew that would happen. And I know it. I hold my breath underwater as well sometimes. Not often, but enough. Yeah, thank you for coming out to do this. But more importantly, what I want you to do is to critique your photographs. Not the photographs you've taken and that you've got in print or on your computer, but the photographs you've just taken. Yeah? Oh, and when you critique them, don't do this. Because that fish will have gone. Yeah? Do this. And then have a look. Don't shove your camera in the fish's face. Just have a look at the screen. Be gone. But have a look at the screen. Think about what we've talked about tonight. What's the most important thing I hope that you've learned tonight is find good negative space and find something to put in it. And then think about the composition. Whether you want rule of thirds, whether you want bullseye, whether you want diagonals, think about the colours. And you've always got that beautiful blue background. So start looking for orange and red and yellow fish or subjects to put in it. Dead easy. It's not. Listen, it ain't that difficult. It's not like playing a violin, which is difficult. That's why nobody's got a violin here. Yet everyone's got a camera. Yeah, get a housing for it, get a separate stroke for it, and go for it. Okay? And if you'd like me to join you for any workshops, I'm available. Okay, move on to my slideshow. Yeah, that was the last shot. Start at the beginning. Sorry, there's a huge amount of photographs on here, megapixel wise, so it takes a bit of time to load it. I'm going to come up to these from the back. Finish filming, Steve. Think about all the aspects that we've talked about tonight and see if they apply to these images.
Capturing the moment, that's quite neat, that one on the left, isn't it? And that one on the right is just all about lighting, isn't it? Oh, I love that. He was hiding, he was in Bali, he was hiding behind his little boat. But he got brave and decided to pose for the cameras from underwater. You cannot not take photographs, can you? I was actually on my way out after a dive, but you've got to stop and do something. So is that frogfish, guys? I submitted that frogfish as a cover shot, you know, and Steve Warren went, none of our readers will know that's a frogfish. So it didn't get published. It doesn't show it on the screen, but that, the feathers around the edge of it make that image look actually quite nice. Superstructure of the Liberty wreck in Bali. And that's all about depth of field, isn't it? Getting texture on the surface. You can see the clouds on the surface there through Simut! I bet you didn't have his teeth in. But it's a nice shot. Sun's behind him, everything's right for that one. And just a really colourful Balinese reef. Although the water looks a bit purple on that shot. Here's a good thing about negative space, that's a wreck in the background. Yeah. And it makes for really interesting negative space. And that's actually part of that wreck, that's a gun turret. Couldn't believe it, the amount of coral on it. Pillar supporting the walkway at the Lhasa Dive Centre in Manado. It's just a pillar, I call that a pillar of life. Sunball behind the crinoid there. Not quite out of frame on that one, but it works, I think. Another thing I like to do with the diver shots, by the way, is to maybe get some bubbles in there. Kathy on the left looks, she could be anywhere, she doesn't even look like she's underwater. Samut on the right has got some bubbles in it. Can you make out what that is? Two cleaner rafts in the gill. Yeah. Oh look, Banting doing his side mount thing. Huge, beautiful, that's taken a real steep depths, like, I don't know, 55, 60 metres that one. And a Balinese reef, unfortunately the sun's blown out, but it's full of colour. And I like the idea of reflections, you know, I've got to experiment with that a bit more with my photography, is actually get the reflections on the surface. I do like, can you swim past a clownfish and not take a photograph? I've been doing this quite a few years now and I still can't, even with wide angle, look, I'm getting the clownfish in. And that's a case of waiting for the right moment, isn't it? Capturing the moment. I love those. Aren't they stunning? Not if you're a starfish. They're not nice animals, starfish. Two common shrimp living on the back of a toxic urchin. I've got that one for sale if you're interested. There's a limited edition high-res print, and that one. And that looks much better than the print, doesn't it? Actually, the print looks so good. But that's just finding the right negative space, as is that. Okay, guys, guess what?
Thank you very much.
All my images, guys, everything that's on there can be seen on my website. My name's Nigel Wade. I take images, it's wadeimaging.com. It's easy to remember. I've got a load of business cards in the car if anybody wants one. Maureen? No? Thanks.
Put your phone number on at the end.
Guys, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that's kind of dragged on a bit, but hey, we did have to eat.
What kind
and drink.
of workshops do you do?
What I'm looking for, what I do is jump on a liveaboard basically, yeah, because it's a captive audience, you're concentrating on one thing, diving and taking photographs. The workshops that we would run would be to improve your photography and get it the best that you can with the equipment that you've got. And we can do that by jumping in the water on the first day, taking your photographs, coming back, let's critique what you've got. Let's see how we can improve it. Look at your rig, you know, and see how you can improve it. And then go out the second day and look at maybe different composition, take it from different angles, different exposures, different shutter speeds, however you want to take the image. Try it a different way and improve on what you've already got. And it's about critique and improvement, but through coaching, yeah, through mentoring, if that's the right word. That's the way I like to run the workshops. And then on the last day, we have a photo competition. And I'll donate prizes to it. I mean, that's what we normally do. Yeah. So we have an on-boat. It's a Liverpool, and it's 12 of you. 11 if I go. Listen, the worst thing on this planet is getting divers' bubbles in the photograph of your clownfish, isn't it? Unless you actually want the diver in there. You don't want some diver's arse as he's swimming away. Banting, I've got loads of those. Or you take a really good shot and you just see a strobe arm sticking into it. You've got to Photoshop out. So the least there is, the least amount of people there are on the boat, smaller the boat, the better it's going to be. Yeah, run more than one. What I'm saying is I'm available if you want to run workshops. I've got a problem with that. So, guys, thank you ever so much. I did mention earlier, quite tongue-in-cheek, that I have some prints for sale. Have a look at them if you fancy them. I normally sell them at £30 each. I'm going to sell them tonight at 20. I mean, it sounds quite expensive, doesn't it? These are limited to 100 images per print, and they're numbered and individually signed on the back and signed on the front. Up to you. Guys, thank you very much. I'm going to have a quick drink.
Quick one. You mentioned Photoshop throughout the evening.
Yes.
Which is a commercial product, commercial software, paid for it. There is a freeware thing called GIMP, which does do the same job. Very similar to
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Don't tell me, tell the rest.
yeah, that's what I'm doing
Yeah,
now.
very good.
Because if you,
I have my gift over there.
Yeah, Picasso is more limited. GIMP is much more complex. So if you want to try and do some more complicated things, you could do in Photoshop. Yeah.
You go searching for GIMP on the web.
Somebody told me I had a photograph on the front of Blue magazine.
Oh dear.
Oh my God, is it of me? In the rubber gear, and then I realised it was CDWS Blue magazine. You do a search for Blue magazine online.
If you will search for GIMP online and avoid anything, if you search for GNU Image Manipulation Program, that's what it stands for.
Just give it download.
Will it go straight to it?
Yeah, find it straight away, yeah.